I'm so excited to be here today in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm with the King Center at the Global Beloved Summit. I just got to speak with Mrs. King back here. This is a great opportunity. She's been an amazing influence over my life, and it was amazing to see her in person, get to speak with her, learning from experts all around the world regarding AI, technology, democracy, and just the nation we have going forward. And so I'll keep everyone updated. I'm really excited today.
For one day to talk about what Georgia aimed and kind of what we've been working on. So again, Georgia's and the country's global competitiveness. We are focused on the intersection of manufacturing, education, technology, innovators, and workforce development.
We look at utilizing AI and incorporating it into our business, not to take away from jobs, but to help actually support jobs. AI is helping us with speed to market. Also, it's there to be able to help us with shipping and logistics. It also helps us when it comes to forecasting so that we can really focus on profit and revenue generation.
With the network of
Hey everyone, I'm Pratik, back with Gen Z Votes. I'm here today with representatives from Georgia AIM, Mr. Ryan and Ms. Kristen. How are you all today?
We're great.
doing well. How are you?
Good. So quickly, Georgia AIM does a lot of projects with youth as well regarding AI, and so I just wanted to understand, what is Georgia AIM doing regarding K through 12 education, and how are you guys integrated in the Georgia area regarding that?
So we have two main initiatives going on through our partners. The first is through Seismic at Georgia Tech. They've been expanding their program with the Inventure Prize, which is a statewide competition that encourages students in all grades to think about a problem and how they can use science and technology to solve that problem. And then another initiative is expanding the robotics programs in Middle Georgia. They have a lot of partnerships with the Warner Robins Air Force Base, and so there's a lot of military presence, and they want to keep students interested in technology in the Middle Georgia area. So they've been expanding the robotics programs that really lays that groundwork for working in these different tech spaces that are needed in the military.
And in addition to that, we've also partnered with local nonprofits across the state, including the Boys and Girls Club, some after-school programs, and so we bring programs from Georgia Tech also to your school. So so we can go around the state, and we can also tailor projects specific to a school.
Nice. So last question for you both. Going forward in the next 5 years, maybe decade, what's the importance of technology, and where do you guys value technology, especially maybe for youth going forward?
So I have an 8-year-old, and one of the things I've been doing with him is getting little electronic kits. So just understanding how things plug together, how sound and motion and electricity can turn something into something else is a really great tool that transfers into so many different career paths.
So I always say technology is in everything. So I think that in 10 years, wow, I mean, where technology is going to be is who knows?
Yeah.
But I think it's something that's ever growing, and I think it's something that is necessary. Obviously, I think it's something that is you forever needs to be upskilled in. And I think that it's exciting. It's exciting to see what's next, and I think if used for good, it can be a great tool.
Sure. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
I'm from Orlando, Florida. I'm a senior in high school. Sure. I'm a senior in high school, so this last topic of youth really resonated with me. I just wanted to follow up and talk about going forward. We talk about AI solving a lot of problems, but as we know, with new solutions, we do have new problems all the time. And one of those I wanted to discuss would be bias. And so I believe it's the job of youth in the next couple of decades to speak up against bias we have in society. What problems, what biases do you guys think that AI could pose in the next decade that it might be our responsibility to speak up against?
I think Pratik has our question list here.
Yes. So I'll start that and say you have to understand what bias is and how bias happens. Bias happens for two reasons: data and people. The only reason we have bias is because the amount of information that we've given it and the people who created that data are biased, right? We see bias in our society, and that represents itself in AI based on the data that comes from society. And so how we fight against bias is trying to set, the guardrails and ethical standards inside of AI to make sure that it's not skewing left way or one right way, because it's representative of how people have made decisions one way or another. And so bias starts at the bottom. And how we combat it is to continue to start at the bottom at the data, and also continually give feedback to the LLM and to the large language models to tell them that it's wrong, right? One of the best feedback models in a model is negative feedback. The more you tell it that it's wrong, the more it learns to figure out, okay, let me skew a little bit better this way instead. So as long as you continue to work with models and give them that feedback and understand the data that you're giving them from the beginning, if we want to dive into any one specific topic or another, you can say that the data could be biased because of poverty, because of race, and medical fields where data may not be available for those particular areas versus may not be available in other areas. All that, again, is why the data is going to look one way or another. And so as we continue also to gather better data, we also have to continue to give it feedback and tell it that you're wrong and this is the most appropriate route to take.
Today's fireside conversation. Is there a grant?
Learn and prey on some of the, biases, hatreds, character, pitfalls, downfalls. We all should be very alarmed at the way in which and the rate at which we have turned to algorithms for mental health and counseling and companionship and all of the things. Just knowing the susceptibility of people who turn to online bots for companionship are particularly susceptible, to manipulation. There should be rules around, right? Like how
people, they really want to get people in, but sometimes you can just use your brain. It's worth it. Our environment needs us to use our brains. We probably all want to be smarter than we are right now. So those would be the two things. I would say, and one last thing, so someone in Atlanta, and your name is Portia. I have always wanted to say, don't make me call Portia.
we appreciate everyone here with us this afternoon who, thank you to the King Center for allowing us the space, to Microsoft for hosting us, to previous panels. This has been a great conversation. Please, if you're interested in learning more about the Black Tech Agenda, please go to colorofchange.org. You can learn more there, sign up, become involved, and look forward to being in community with all of you.
And to my high school student in the back that asked about bias, if you ever want to get a PhD, if you ever want to get into research, please come in and find me. That was a great question.
A legislative session, and so she broke away from the Capitol to be here with us, so hugely grateful for her.
An auditable paper trail after a voter voting. So you would make your selections on the touch screen, you would press submit, and you would hope that your vote was recorded accurately. And when the new equipment was being discussed, much of the discussion revolved around, okay, how do we improve those processes? How do we create an auditable trail? And fundamentally, how do we increase public trust in our elections? And I am very glad that we had an auditable system in place before the 2020 election. We had candidates telling the country that the results in Georgia were wrong and that the election had been stolen. But because we had that new system that left a paper trail of every single vote, we were able to perform numerous recounts and audits that debunked the allegations of fraud. Nevertheless, the refusal to accept the results of the elections, coupled with rampant misinformation and disinformation about how elections work, led to a powerful election denialism movement, and perhaps much more broadly, the questioning of the security and veracity of our election system became part of the mainstream conversation. So the loss in trust in our election system, whether or not it was tethered to any actual evidence, has been used in Georgia and in other places, but certainly in Georgia, as justification to change voting laws. In 2021, The Georgia General Assembly passed a sweeping, and they don't trust it. And so if you introduce technology or AI into the elections process, you run the risk of legitimately shaking voter confidence. And you run the risk of giving disingenuous actors an easy way to sow doubt in election results that they do not like. So I think that background is incredibly important as we talk about solutions that technology can potentially offer. I've personally seen both ends of the spectrum. On the one hand, we have folks that come to the Capitol that don't like the election system that we're using right now. They want us to go to hand-marked paper ballots. They want us to do counts by hand. They don't want to use any technology or equipment at all. And then on the other side, you have folks that say, hey, let's make voting easier for everybody. Let's just do it all online. Right? We do our banking online, we can do our taxes online, why can't we just vote in line too? And wouldn't that just be a great way to increase voter turnout? And so I think the question isn't just what's possible through technology. The question also has to be around what is viable given public sentiments around voting and given the political realities that we live in. Easy tech upgrades that would have a far-reaching impact on people's ability to cast their ballots. And I'll give you just a few examples of the low-hanging fruit. When I was running for office, those locations change all the time, those hours change all the time, and if you don't know where to look, you might not know where to find that information. So I set up a site where people could visit and they could get that information texted to them or emailed to them. They could get a calendar invite that would remind them when to vote and where to vote. They would receive directions on how to get to their polling location through the app that we created. If they wanted to use public transportation, they could do that too. They could sign up for that option and receive instructions, either bus schedules or MARTA schedules, so that they could get to where they needed to go, when they needed to get there, so that their vote would count. Now that's just me as a candidate understanding that technology offers solutions that help the voting process. Imagine if our counties adopted those solutions, or if our state adopted those solutions. One of the biggest reasons for disenfranchisement of voters is people going to the wrong location on election day. What a solvable problem, right? Another challenge that we had involved folks who wanted to vote by mail. So in Georgia, the rule is if you don't return your mail-in ballot by election day, your vote doesn't count. And there's no transparency into where your ballot is. You apply for it, eventually you get it, then you have to set it back. Maybe it gets back on time, maybe it doesn't. Well, what if we were to create a tracking process for these ballots, a way to track where your ballot is when it's sent to you, how long it's going to take to get to you, how long it's going to take to get back to the county, right? To some extent, we're just very dependent on the Postal Service to make our votes count. If that's not working, if that's not running on time, then it's possible that our vote won't count. But with the tracking system, and by the way, other states do this, you'll know if you can get your ballot back on time, or maybe something has gone wrong and you need to contact your county and ask for a replacement ballot. But a tracking system, again, kind of a low-tech digital solution, gives people transparency and it gives people more trust into the vote-by-ballot system, vote-by-mail system. And I say across the state, but it really wasn't across the state. It was targeted to Atlanta and Metro Atlanta. And because those bomb threats came down around 10 a.m., you obviously have to take it seriously. You have to clear the building. You have to bring in the authorities. You have to give the all clear before voting can resume. And because it was 10 a.m., we were able, again, to go to the court, say, hey, this happened, the location was shut down for this number of hours, so can we have an extended hour later? And we were able to inform voters in those areas that voting had been extended in those areas. And so we thought we had the situation under control. Now fast forward a few hours, the polls are closing at 7 o'clock. That 5 to 7 period is when people get out of work, and there's usually a huge surge at the polls. Around 5 o'clock, the phones start going off the hooks, right? And we get reports of over 24 bomb threats all over Atlanta, mostly DeKalb County, Fulton County. And what I knew from my experience in dealing with these issues was that no matter what we did at that point, because it was so close to closing and because so many people were going to be turned away, there was no solution, there was no extension that was going to bring back all those voters that were leaving the polls. And, you know, this is the context in which we had an election decided by 12,000 votes in 2020. And all the campaigning, all the hard work, all the volunteer hours, all the money, it was gonna come down to a few bad actors making calls and potentially deciding the outcome of the election. Not Georgians deciding the outcome of elections, but bad actors, who knows where. Maybe we had reports out of Russia, we had reports that they were coming from all over, and I still don't know where those bomb threats came from. And, you know, that's kind of what happened. We went to the courts, we sought our extensions. They weren't able to issue orders until after 7 o'clock. So even though we got the extensions, people were already gone, right? And a lot of people got turned away. And I think a lot of the reason this didn't hit the news as much as it could was it really ended up being a non-issue. The margin of victory was much wider than potentially the number of people that were turned away. But certainly the people that were making those calls about the bomb threats didn't know that. Right? And in a different world, that absolutely could have changed the outcome of the election. And so I share that story to say the threat to our democracy is real. And we do not have the tools right now to address all of these threats. I am so grateful to rooms like this who are trying to leverage the potential of technology to address these very real issues. And while I do think that AI can be weaponized and can be dangerous, and tech can be dangerous with respect to voting rights, it's because of groups like this, hopefully in collaboration with lawmakers and other stakeholders who are putting up the guardrails and figuring out what the regulations should be in this very evolving context. That is how we are going to make a difference and go forward. So again, I thank you and appreciate the opportunity to speak a little bit on this topic.
I actually worked during the general election this November as the youngest poll clerk in my county, and so I worked with a bunch of poll workers, and I've always been interested in exactly what you were just talking about, which is exactly how tech and AI can help facilitate that process. Could you expand, I guess, maybe on specifically poll working? How would you suggest maybe that can be facilitated and streamlined with tech? And just other ways in which going back to Orlando can help and work with other stakeholders and integrate technology to, increase voter turnout, decrease polarization, stuff like that.
Yeah, so great question, and there's so many great ideas out there. Something that we've seen recently are just line tracking. So people don't want to go to the polls when there's a long line, they'd rather go when there's no wait. We now have incorporated, some of our counties have incorporated websites where you can see what the wait is, so that you can go at a time when there is no line, right? That's a really easy solution. Not every county does it. And I think, again, it goes back to this question of the tools are there, is there political will to put these tools in place to help the voter experience? I think that when more places do it and voters come to expect that kind of treatment is where you get the expansion of those tools. Colorado is a state that comes to mind as being very voter friendly and really using technology to help it in its processes. And I'll say that a lot of our election officials see the advantage of using these tools for relatively small investments. The voter experience is so much better, and it also goes back to this issue of trust, right? When voters know what's happening, when they have a good experience, we get more buy-in to the system, we get more buy-in to the results, which is such an important thing, and there is an ability to just reject these conspiracy theories and these misinformation and the disinformation that is disseminating out there. So I think there is so much value added just beyond the voter gets to check a website and make sure they're going to vote in 2 minutes as opposed to standing in a 2-hour line. But I would just encourage you to talk to folks in other states. There's lots of great ideas out there, and these networks are communicating constantly.
Hi, my name is Pratik Sila, and I'm a senior in high school from Orlando, Florida at Lake Highland Prep. Today, I learned that nonviolence isn't just a philosophy that applies to physical situations. I've learned that nonviolence can be applied to technology and to democracy. And so I found how, for example, AI algorithms may have biases, and using the principles of nonviolence, we can try to eliminate those biases and make society more fair for everyone. I would encourage everyone, regardless of age, gender, regardless of where you're from, to get in the movement of nonviolence and apply it to your daily life, whether that be seeking out how to see how technology can intersect with what you're interested in and to eliminate the issues that we have in those fields. Regardless of what it is, I would urge everyone to engage with nonviolence as a philosophy in their daily life.
Thank you.
Yep.